Alright, so I wanted to make this quick video explaining some of the components that you can buy secondhand because a lot of people approach me and they are like, okay, give me a good PC for this price and I want everything to be new. And I scratch my head. It's like, why do you want everything to be new? There's literally no difference. You're just paying more money for a newer package, probably probably the nylon around it. That's the thing. So yeah, I've decided to break up PC components into three categories, and this is pretty much a TLDR on how to shop for PC parts as well. Like, you don't need to spend a lot of money on some components, such as these, and possibly these as well. I'll explain my categories a bit more, so let's get into them. There are three categories: stuff to buy new, stuff to buy with a warranty, and 100% buy second hand. Even without a warranty, it's gonna be fine. So the only one that really needs explanation is this one. It's basically like, be cautious if you're buying second hand, and that's it. The other categories are pretty telling. So why did I put stuff in the places that they're in? We're gonna start with the PSU. So power supply is what gives your other components power. Easy enough. What This is a very simple electronic component, at least in its basics. And it's also pretty easy to repair. But why did I put it here? They don't break if you buy it from a reputable brand. But if they did break, say there's a very small chance of them breaking, and if they did, they might possibly could maybe hurt your other components in the system, and you don't want to risk that. So buy a new PSU. Motherboard is the same thing. It has a lot of moving parts, and it's sometimes hard to identify if it will work properly or not, because you buy the motherboard, you connect everything, and it's fine, but maybe later you decide to put in a new USB device, and oh, look at this, that specific USB slot doesn't work, or that extra PCIe slot doesn't work, or something like that. This fan header doesn't work. So yeah, buy a new motherboard. It's not worth the risk. It has a lot of moving parts and kind of hard to identify as a normal user, you know. So that's why you have these two. There is another reason as well, but I'll get to that whenever I'm done talking about everything else. So stuff to be careful when buying secondhand are graphics cards, SSDs, RAMs, and monitors. Now, graphics cards are fine because worst case scenario, they break, they die, right? They cannot hurt anything in your system. It's an isolated device. If it breaks, it breaks. I mean, that sucks, but it's not gonna hurt anything in your system. It's not gonna break other components. You just replace it. So that's the thing. SSDs, they can be kind of they can wear out if they're used very intensely. So if you're buying a solid state drive, ask for benchmarks, ask for a health test, and see if it stacks up well. Just look up the model you're trying to buy online, see what the standard benchmark for that is, and then compare it to the second-hand component that you're trying to buy. And then if it looks fine, then yeah, go for it. RAM is literally just a stick. It doesn't have a lot of stuff on it, but some they do kind of break sometimes for dumb reasons. And I've had RAM sticks that broke, and sometimes it's easy to fix. You know, you just clean them. You clean the dust off. Maybe there's like, you know, something obstructing it from connecting properly to the slot. But yeah, RAM is usually going to be fine. Buy with a warranty if you can. If you can't, then at least buy something that looks new and looks clean, and you're gonna be fine. Monitors. So you have to be kind of careful with monitors, and that's not saying that it's hard. Just you can buy any monitor, but be careful and be looking around for dead pixels and things like that, weird artifacts in whenever showing display. Like, if you're buying a second-hand monitor and it doesn't have a warranty, ask your seller to give you, I don't know, like 24 hours of testing time, so you can actually like test the monitor, see if it's all right. But that's it for the monitors. Monitors is probably the safest second category component to buy secondhand. And yeah, don't be afraid to buy secondhand. Like, this might be worrisome to some, but I just did this as a disclaimer. I would personally buy all of these components secondhand if I found stuff that's worth it and they're clean. Now, 100% buy secondhand. These are stuff that's hard to break or easy to replace. So a CPU, it's hard to cook and break a CPU. Just ask for benchmarks and compare it to benchmarks that are on the internet from reputable sites, or your favorite YouTuber. If it looks similar, then it's probably fine, and you're going to be fine buying that CPU, and especially CPUs that are LGA. And now that might sound confusing, but it's really simple. You pick up the CPU, you look at the back of the CPU. Does it have pins sticking out of it? Yes, then it's not an LGA CPU. Look for any bent pins. If it has bent pins, don't buy it. If it doesn't have bent pins, it's fine. If it's an LGA CPU, it doesn't have any pins sticking out. So it's gonna be fine too. Now, cases. Case is just literally a piece of metal. Like, how do you break that? You can physically just inspect it. If it's fine, then it's fine. It's a metal. Like, yeah, oh, yeah. For the case, be careful with the fans. I mean, the fans are fine, but test them for a bit. They're probably fine. If they're not fine, you can easily replace them. But that's the thing to be looking for when buying a second-hand case. Properly working fans. They're not too noisy. They don't make weird noises. Some fans are just noisy, but they don't make like weird noises. And yeah, if the fans are fine, the case is going to be fine. And cables, I mean, everybody can buy a cable. It's just a cable. If it works, it works. So these are the things that you need: your CPU, your power supply, motherboard, graphics card, SSD, RAM, monitor, case, and cables. If you have these, you're going to be getting an image on the screen. So now for the stuff that's optional. Pretty much everything that's optional you can buy secondhand. And I mean, there isn't such thing as secondhand software, but I'll explain why I put this there. Well, but first let's talk about the HDD, so the hard disk drive. The hard disk drive, check for health, check for benchmarks, but also make sure that you're buying from a decent looking seller. It's not a shady seller, and the price isn't weird, so it's not like too low, because sometimes people can just put harmful software on the HDD and give you a bad HDD. It has bad sectors and stuff, so that's why you should ask your seller to send you benchmarks and a health test, then compare it to stuff that's available online. If it looks approximately around the same area, the results, then it's gonna be fine. The same for the SSD. Actually, the SSD can have harmful software on it too, so be looking around for that. Whenever you buy it, format it, and then check with an antivirus or something, and it's gonna be fine. Mouse, keyboard, headphones, apart from hygiene, which you can physically check, everything else is going to be it's just a USB device. You plug it in, you plug it out, you can easily replace it. Nothing special. CPU coolers. If you're watching this guide, then you're probably going to buy a mid-range or like low-end CPU, and most of those do come with stock coolers, and they're gonna be working perfectly fine for 10 years. So don't worry about it. But in case you buy a CPU and it doesn't come with a CPU cooler, then buy a CPU cooler that's compatible with your CPU. So you look at what socket does your CPU use, for example, LGA 1700 for new Intel ones, and then you buy a CPU cooler that has a bracket for that socket or just is native to that socket, and yeah, it's gonna work, no problems. Adding cards, for example, sound card, Wi-Fi, internet, Ethernet, or a capture card, things like that, probably fine to buy secondhand. Just test them. If it works fine, it works fine. It's an easy replacement anyway, So worth buying secondhand. Software, well, here's the thing. You don't need to pay full price for software. Probably everybody knows this, but I put this here for the one person who might be completely new to computers. You can buy original keys for software real cheap. I think Humble Bundle used to sell Windows keys and it was ridiculously cheap. And there are other stores like that as well. Or just, you can search online Windows keys and buy a Windows key. And yeah, it's gonna be what, a fifth of the price or less sometimes. So yeah, don't buy software at retail price. You're just gonna get, you're just gonna be overspending. And that is if you need original software to begin with, wink wink, you know. So there is another reason why I recommended you to buy these new, and that's the other issue, that is they're hard to replace or time consuming to replace. If you want to replace your dead PSU, say you have a new PSU or like the warranty guys replaced your PSU for you, you need to undo all your cable management, kind of like depending on how your case is structured, break up your PC, pull some components out, replace the PSU, and run cable management again and things like that. So it's time consuming to replace. Same for the motherboard. For the motherboard, you need to pull all your components out, pull your motherboard out, and then struggle with it because there is a 24 pin PSU connector to the motherboard, and that can be very that can be very hard to pull out, and you need to apply some force, and if you're not careful, you might like bend your motherboard. That's not gonna happen with motherboards that are properly reinforced, but just in case, I'm saying be careful with pulling that specific one out. And yeah, it's gonna be very time consuming. So buy these for two reasons: because they can harm potentially your other components, and they're hard to replace or time consuming to replace. So that's why you should be buying these new. Buy these with a warranty because they can have some potential problems in rare cases. Buy these secondhand because they're gonna work secondhand just fine. For the CPU, ask for benchmark. If it looks fine with the stuff that's on the internet, then it's gonna be fine. Everything else, you know when you see a good component physically. So yeah, you can identify health physically for all of these except this one, but it's not a big issue. So yeah, I hope this is useful. I'll be around in the comment section for a bit, so like if you have any questions, hopefully I can answer it for you. But yeah, hopefully this is useful for you. Opinion number one: if you want to buy a graphics card, try to buy newer graphics cards, so that you're looking at NVIDIA 10th series or newer, so that's your 1060s, 1070s, 1080s, etc. Or AMD RX series, so RX 480s, RX 470s, RX 580, 570, RX 6600s, RX 76s, things like that. RX series for AMD that has RX at the front, and GTX 10th series or better, so 1070, 2070, 3070, 4070, things like that for NVIDIA. That's those are like relatively new GPUs that are properly you can find proper benchmarks that are relatively new. Like there are some really good videos on them, benchmark videos. Some relevant YouTubers are still doing benchmarks on these. Some prominent YouTubers, can even Linus Tech Tips, Hardware Unbox, Gamers Nexus. They do still include some of those in their benchmark tests, so you can have new and updated benchmark tests for those graphics cards. Try to buy a graphics card with at least 6 gigabytes of memory. Even 6 gigabytes is kind of too low nowadays to play like new games on ultra settings, but it's gonna carry you through games with high settings and things like that just fine. So yeah, avoid 4 gigabyte cards, I'd say.